Both Diane and I are preachers' kids. Not only that, we're Baptist preachers' kids. Not only that, we're fundamentalist Baptist preachers' kid. My mother reminded me regularly that a dancing foot and a praying knee don't grow on the same leg. And so we never went to dances because you know what it might lead to. And so we skipped the lead to part. Not only that, neither one of us is blessed with a great natural sense of rhythm. So if we hit the dance floor, there are several left feet out there. You know, you probably have watched ballroom dancing on TV. It all looks so effortless, doesn't it? Watched a little bit of the Open yesterday. You know, it just looks really, really easy to hit that little round ball with that stick until I try it. There's a rhythm to it, a rhythm to how you dance, how you hit that little round white ball. So it's an understatement to say that Diane and I provided a good deal of entertainment for the people of God at Burton Latimer Baptist Church in Burton Latimer, England, when they were having a going away party for us after I'd done a pulpit exchange there. They had a folk dance not unlike square dance, and they were entertained watching us trying to get it right, which we never did. Rhythm is important, isn't it? It's important in music. These four that sing together so well, it's important that they stay in the right rhythm, or else it's just chaos, isn't it? It's important in dancing. It's important in golf. Yay, it's important in life. In all aspects of life, rhythm is important. And if we get out of that rhythm, everything tends to go awry, doesn't it? Even the life of those who claim to follow Jesus, there is a rhythm to that. Both Martha and Mary learned that in our text for this morning, don't they? If you were here last week, you know that the verses immediately preceding this text, we find the story of the Samaritan, right? We considered that last Sunday as wounded travelers and welcoming innkeepers. Jesus tells the story of the Samaritan to a man who, as you recall, is quite skilled in Scripture, but who has trouble hearing the Word of God. And so Jesus tells the story of the Samaritan as an example of what we are to do. In our text for this morning, Jesus visits a woman who's so busy serving, so busy doing, that she doesn't have time to hear the word. So Jesus offers her an example, her own sister. You see the difference in those two stories? Last week, go and do likewise. This week, it's okay to sit, to ponder, to listen, to learn, to rest. You see, the rhythm of our life is not either or, it's both and. It's about finding balance in our lives. Yes, at the end of the Samaritan story, Jesus says, "Go and do likewise." It gets a bit confusing, doesn't it? Side by side, we have these two occasions calling us on one hand to be actively engaged in addressing human need, and then on the other, telling us to sit, listen, learn, ponder, meditate. The good news is we're not asked to make a choice between them. The bad news is that we've got to find balance. We've got to find a rhythm. Let's be honest. We need Marthas in our world, don't we? We need them at Myers Park Baptist Church. Without the Marthas, this place closes down. Where would we be without the Marthas? And when that work is done right, Martha work tends to be invisible. Rooms are orderly, clothes are clean, the food is good and plentiful. It all just seems to happen. We leave after worship on Sunday. The next Sunday we come back, and lo and behold, guess what? There's mulch spread all over. It just happened. It's magic. It's a miracle. Imagine that. The trains just run on time, and we take it for granted. In the first church I served, we were leaving to go to Liberty, Missouri, a suburb of Kansas City, to serve a church there, and I was going to finish my seminary work. The church had a lovely going away party for us. Lovely. And then Diane and I turned around and looked at each other. Everybody was gone. The lights were on. The doors were unlocked. Where was Martha? And so my last act as their associate pastor was to turn off the lights and lock the doors. We just count on it happening, don't we? Think about this story. For goodness sake, this is Martha's house. She's the one in charge of hospitality. She must see that the guests are provided for. But don't you think it's kind of interesting the way that she does it? Perhaps a little passive-aggressive. She whines to Jesus about her sister and says, "Tell her to get off her seat in and come help me." Perhaps she's grown tired of this invisible work of being virtually invisible herself. Perhaps she's tired of never being able to sit down and enjoy her own parties. Perhaps she's tired of being the careful, responsible, older sister, the woman of the house, the one responsible for everyone else's well-being and comfort. For after all, that kitchen is really hot and the pots and pans are piling up. Hey, it would be good to have some help in here. Martha's just about had it. Once again, we rely on Martha to get the Martha work done, don't we? And to postpone her own pleasure so we can be at ease. Where would Jesus be without Martha? Be hungry. You know, the people at the shelter for those who are unhoused, their meals just show up. But there are Marthas who show up in the kitchen at Myers Park Baptist Church for a roof above. Those meals don't just happen without Martha. Is Jesus saying, Martha, what you do is not important? No, Jesus is saying you need to find an appropriate rhythm in life. All work and no pray make Martha a dull girl. Ceaseless activity, turning the heat up on ourselves to get it done and to do this relentlessly, is to end up being only half a disciple, regardless of the good we're attempting to do, because we will not have the reservoir, the spiritual reservoir to keep going. That's where burnout comes, when we try to do something that we don't have because we don't have that underpinning. Bill Hybels reminds us, if any ordinary engine turns 4,000 revolutions per minute, a racing motor can turn up to 10,000. The marketplace mentality says, rev that engine up to 10,000 as soon as you get up in the morning and keep it there until you collapse in the sack at night. And getting caught up in that intense pace can be rewarding, right? It's exciting when the adrenaline starts to flow and you get on a roll, when your motor starts racing faster and faster and faster. But living that way leaves precious little time for quiet moments, rest, meditation, discernment. And without that, sooner or later, he says, you and I cannot live an authentic life any longer. Folks, we have some Marthas here that need some rest. It's time for you Marys to stand up, plug in, and go to work. Because there's another kind of work, not just Martha. It's Mary work, and it's vastly different. It's nurturing that life within you, not just adding to the trappings around you. It's a commitment to hear the word, to learn. We're called to stop, hard stop. Give ourselves to the one who loves us more than we can ever love ourselves. And then and only then can we understand what it means to be a faithful disciple of Jesus. And then and only then will we have the strength, the wisdom, and the courage to undertake that which is our calling. Without listening, we end up making a mess, regardless of how well-intentioned we may be. Back in my early seminary years, my friend Randy Ashcraft and I painted houses to help pay our way through seminary. Well, we got this plum job right across the street from Harris Hospital at Boswell Florists. The only issue was we had to do the painting at night because they used it as a flower shop during the day. Well, our backs were against the wall. We had to finish it that night, and there was no way in the world we were going to be able to finish it. So one of our New Testament professors said, I'll come and help. Well, that was a gracious offer. He didn't have to do that. But that place was not particularly well lit at night. He wore very, very thick glasses. He had some visual issues. Plus, he didn't know a thing about painting. And so, at the end of the day, we had a mess on our hands. It would have been better, all things being considered, as well-intentioned as he was, if he hadn't shown up and helped us. The same goes for all the Marthas who always do but never stop, listen, pray, ponder, discern, to let everything soak in. But you and I both know that the listening, the waiting, the stop, the Mary work is not an end in itself. The Mary work enables us to the do work. James 1:22 reminds us, but be doers of the word and not hearers only who deceive themselves. James doesn't say be doers and not hearers on one hand, nor on the other does he say be hearers and don't worry about the doing. He says, well, it's got to be a balance. We've got to discover that rhythm in life. So this morning we have these two stories together. The story of the Samaritan, the story of Martha and Mary. Neither one is complete without the other. Each makes its own point. The Samaritan is a neighbor, loves his neighbor, even though the neighbor doesn't look like the Samaritan, think like the Samaritan, act like the Samaritan, believe like the Samaritan. The Samaritan is still a neighbor. So the Samaritan loves his neighbor, and Mary loves Jesus. Jesus says here, discipleship is not an either-or proposition. It requires both. To do or attempt to do one without the other is to end up being only half a disciple. So what are we to do then? You know, if we come down too hard on Martha, she may quit on us entirely. Where would we be then? How are we going to get the work done? How are we going to eat? Who's going to prepare the food? And what about Mary? If we applaud her too much, she may sit there forever and never move. So, yes, there is a rhythm, God's rhythm. There's a time to go and do. There's a time to listen and reflect. Knowing which and when is a matter of spiritual discernment. So Jesus, we've got a question. Okay. Which of those examples apply to us? Martha, who goes and does, or Mary, who sits and listens? And Jesus says, yes. Yes.
In our life of discipleship, sometimes it can be difficult to find our rhythm, to know how to pray,